Hey guys, Alan here, welcome back to the workshop. Today I want to make a big battery for my DSLR. The way I do my filming is I'd like to have the camera just let it run, and when I'm milling or whatever, I don't want to be fooling around with the camera, so I just let it run and then throw away everything I don't want afterwards. But that demands quite a bit of battery life, and or otherwise have the thing connected to via a cable to a power outlet somewhere. I want to have it self-contained on my camera pole off a big battery. So that's what this is all about. Let's get into it. So because the inbuilt battery of the camera doesn't last very long, it's an old battery and doesn't hold its charge very well, I bought this thing, which is otherwise sometimes known as a dummy battery, otherwise known as a coupler, and it has the same physical dimensions and etc., and fits in the camera in place of the battery, and it has the correct pin out to line up with the connections inside the camera, but it only has two connections for positive and negative DC coming in the case of this camera at 9 volts. Or technically I think it's 8.7 or something, but anyway, 9 volts gets the job done. And this dummy battery or coupler works fine connected to one of these wall adapters, so plugged into the wall. But that's a bit of a nuisance because I use the camera on a tripod and I like to be able to move it around. So I want this to connect to basically a battery, a big battery, and that will then allow the camera to be completely self-contained on its tripod. So the task here is to make a power supply from a battery at the correct voltage to power this thing up in the camera. So I've sourced one of these do-it-yourself DC plugs with the right size ends, and that's a business in itself. You've got to have the outside diameter correct and the inside diameter correct for your situation. But I'm going to obviously hang a wire on that, and we're off to the races. So this is the battery that I've chosen to do the business. 7 amp hours. It's 12.8 volts, so obviously have to drop that voltage down to the 8.7 that the camera ideally wants. And I'll show you how we can do that. This battery at the moment is being charged via the standard battery charger, really, except that this particular one does have it does have a specific lithium charging circuit, and I've forgotten what the output of this thing is now. Well, I think it's 1.5 amps, something like that. So it would take about 7 hours to fully charge a flat battery, but that's fine for me. I'm expecting or hoping that with this 7 amp hours available, I'll get a full day's worth of use out of this, and it can charge overnight. Anyway, so the only other point to make here is the connectors on this battery are these spade terminals. Let's get this charger out of the way. So what I'm going to do there is use these little guys, sort of a double spade thing. I don't know what to call it, piggyback maybe. The battery came with these plastic covers on the terminals, so I can put these on and then have these plastic things over there to give some insulation. And when I want to charge, obviously, and just take the cover off. So that's how I'm going to get started, and I don't know whether it will stay that way. We'll see. But anyway, so you're getting the general idea, and I might tidy something up. Now the next part of the deal obviously is to get the voltage right, and that's where this comes in. You can buy these at electronic stores. I think this was $12, something like that, and I will include a picture of from the back. at a proper scan so you can read that. But this little device will actually take pretty much any DC input from 3 volts to 40 volts and put out anywhere you want, anything you want, from 1.25 to up to 30 volts DC with a maximum output of 3 amps. And that little screw that you can see there is how you set the required output voltage. Now, I had tried using one of these guys. This is plug it into USB into something like one of these power banks with the USB thingos, and this has certainly got enough power, but it's this thing doesn't allow it to do the job, because it's sort of an appliance thing. You plug it into a 5 volt USB socket and it sticks out 9 volts there. Well, yes it does, but at a maximum output of 1 amp. And my SLR needs more like 2 amps for various activities. It might be alright with 1 when it's on standby or something, but this just doesn't get the job done. So I'm replacing this basically. So we'll be taking power in from the battery here, adjusting the screw, power out there, and I'm going to use these things. I'm going to mount this thing into, I call them a jiffy box, I don't know what anybody else calls them, but it's a little plastic box. So that's going to sit in there. I'll have these little DC jack things, one at each end, so from the battery out to the camera, using the this plug that I bought to match the coupler. And that's basically it. It's pretty simple from an electrical point of view. I've just got to do a little bit of drilling of holes to get that in there. I'll probably just stick this in the bottom with a bit of hot melt glue. And then as far as mounting the whole thing when it's finished, I'll probably just stick that on there again with the hot melt glue. I don't think it needs to be anything more elaborate than that. So that's the plan. I'll get to it. Okay, so I've made a bit of progress here. I've got the holes for the for these things to go in. I've mounted this little board on a couple of standoffs and hot glued a piece of plastic in the bottom here with a couple of screws coming up through it. So these screw heads are recessed below the bottom of the box, so it won't touch anything when I strap it down. So this guy will just happily sit on there on those screws. So I just knocked one of them out, but never mind. Yep. That's going to go in there like that. And with these guys in place, all I've got left to do is solder 4 wires in, and this bit's done. I'll bring you back when I've done the soldering. Not much point me showing you soldering, everybody knows how to do that. Okay, so as you can see, I've done enough to get the power light on at least. So seriously, the DC to DC converter board is mounted in the box, and I've wired it up to the input and the output jack, and being very careful with the polarity, and I've made up a short lead to go from there to the battery terminals. So now it's time to check the output voltage and adjust it. So let's have a quick look, and at the moment we've got 12.87. I want 7.2 for this application, so we're going to wind this down. I believe you have to wind it quite a lot, so let's give it quite a few turns and see what difference that makes. None. It's not a good start, is it? Alright, well, let's try turning it the other way. Looks like it is going down slightly. Oh right, suddenly we've dropped to 6.3, so I'm going to come up a little bit from there. .4, so down a little bit. .23, well that's close enough for me. So that's what the battery has marked on it, so I'm presuming that's what is right for this camera. Okay, so what I've got to do now is make up the lead with this connector on the end, so I can hook into the dummy battery. Okay, so the output voltage on the battery, as I checked, was nearly 8. We'll see what the output voltage is here. Still 7.2. So I think we'll wind it up a bit and increase it to 8 to match the battery. So I have to take the lid off to do that. Jump the gun by putting the lid on. So I'm going to have to come back to this anyway, because I want to put a switch and an indicator light on the lid. I just wanted, I suppose, see the wheels go around and make sure it worked before I went to that additional trouble. So 8 volts we're looking for. I think we'll go with that. I think the battery was 7.93 or something like that. I can't remember. Anyway, we'll go with that. I might have confused you earlier on by starting the video off with the coupler from my Nikon camera, which needs 9 volts. And now finished up, I decided to use the Lumix camera, and this is the coupler from that, and it needs well, nominally 7.2, but the 8 volts that I have set the device for. So I'm sorry if that confused people. So it's time to test it with the camera. I'll get set up to do that and bring you back. Okay, so you're not going to be able to see this very well at the moment. I'll get set up with another camera to show you properly, but it is in fact now running off the new power supply. The power meter in the camera says it's fully off a fully charged battery. So that's it for now. So I finished wiring all this lot up and installed a switch and an indicator light, and that's all pretty simple to do. So I'm ready to button this up now. As far as the battery is concerned and charging it, I decided to use a fly lead here, which will have a quick disconnect onto the charger. So this is a close-up of the quick disconnect fitting. The part on the left is what's attached to the charger, and you can see that is very easy to operate. It's going to be a hell of a lot better than fiddling around with those spade terminals, because getting them separated can be a real bugger. So these leads will be able to stay attached to the battery all the time, and I won't have to do any fighting with the spade connectors. I've also made up a little battery tray, I suppose you'd call it, to sit the battery in. That's going to sit on my camera pole, and this guy is going to just be glued there, hot melt glued there. So that's it really. So I'll do all of that, do the final assembly, and then show you what it looks like. I didn't do any video of making this thing because it's only a bit of sheet metal work, but also it's only relevant to my situation. Making this thing is much more of general application to others who might want to have an extended battery life for their DSLR, But this, well, you have to make your own mounting arrangements if you go down that path. Okay, so let's have a look at the full assembly. I've stuck these wires down with a hot melt glue, made up a plastic cap here from the bottom of a little pot to cover those terminals. That's all just tacked down with the hot melt glue, and I think that's going to be just fine. So here's my quick connect for attaching the charger, and I did in fact include a switch and the LED, which all works fine. And there we go. I've got basically an indefinite battery life on this guy now. The camera itself, this Lumix camera, one of its key features is that it doesn't have a time limit on the amount of time you can record. A lot of DSLRs, if not all, most of them, have a 20 to 30 minute time limit, but that guy will run until the battery runs out or you run out of storage, which really suits the way I work. Put the camera on and let it run, and then afterwards get rid of everything you don't want. I'm working on the machines, I don't want to be thinking about cameras, get into enough trouble without that. Okay, so I'm quite happy with the way this turned out. It's a fairly compact unit. A possible future enhancement is to put some sort of a fuel gauge on here to show when the battery needs recharging. But apart from that, I think it turned out pretty well. I'm happy. Anyway, I hope you found it interesting, maybe a bit useful, give you some ideas. If you did like it, please click on the like. If you did like it, please click on the like, maybe subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell to be told about upcoming videos. Thanks again, and bye for now.